Today we're going to go over the 3.1 to 3.3 study guide for our quiz tomorrow. My remote learners, please remember that you are still expected to take this quiz tomorrow during your scheduled time period, just like all the rest of the quizzes and tests. So if you have any questions about that, please send me an email ASAP. All right, so let's complete the statement. Angle 1 and angle blank are a pair of corresponding angles. So if I look at angle 1 here, remember corresponding angles are angles that are in the same position in that cluster of 4 angles. So angle 1 and angle 3 would be corresponding angles. Angle 2 and angle blank are a pair of alternate interior angles. Alternate means the opposite side of this transversal, and interior means inside are 2 parallel lines. All right, so alternate interior, if we have angle 2, the alternate interior to angle 2 would be angle 6. Angle 4 and angle blank are a pair of alternate exterior angles. So alternate, opposite sides of the transversal, exterior are on the outside of these 2 lines. So if we have angle 4, the alternate exterior to angle 4 would be angle 8. Angle 7 and angle blank are a pair of consecutive interior angles. So interior are in between these 2 lines. Consecutive means same side. So if we're talking about angle 7, the same side interior would be angle 6. And then finally, angle 3 and angle blank are a pair of vertical angles. So angle 3 is here. Remember, vertical angles, if we have a cross, vertical angles are opposite of each other. So that would mean angle 5 would be the pair of vertical angles. All right, next, let's find the value of x in the figure. We have 2 examples here. So if we look at example 2, I know that these lines are parallel because of those 2 arrows. So since those lines are parallel, we need to look at these 2 angles. All right, are those one of our special angle pairs? And they are. We have alternate interior angles here. And we know that if we have alternate interior angles and our 2 lines are parallel, we know the alternate interior angles are congruent. So I'm just going to set these 2 equations equal to each other. So I have 3x is equal to 75, divide by 3, divide by 3, and x is equal to 25. For question number 3, I am going to assume that these are parallel here. So we have these 2 angles that I'm looking at. So these are our same side interior. So we know that they are not congruent. They're going to add up to 180 degrees. So I have 4x plus 84 is equal to 180 degrees. Subtract 84, subtract 84. Then I get 4x is equal to 96, divide by 4, divide by 4, and I'm running out of room, but x is equal to 24. All right, our next problem here. So I see that these lines are parallel. So I need to look at my 2 angle pairs here again, and just like the last problem, these are same side interior or consecutive angles, so they add up to 180. These are the only types of angles that add up to 180. So 5x plus 20 plus 80 is equal to 180. Let's combine my like terms. So I get 5x plus 100 is equal to 180. Subtract 100 from each side. So 5x is equal to 80. Divide by 5, and I end up getting that x is equal to 16. Number 5 here. All right, I see I have parallel lines, so I need to solve for x. Well, what type of angle pair is this here? They are alternate exterior angles, and we know that if those lines are parallel, then our alternate exterior angles are congruent. So I'm just going to set these two equations equal to each other. So I have 137 is equal to 4x plus 5. I'm going to subtract 5 from each side. So 132 is equal to 4x. Divide by 4, so 33 is equal to x. All right, so find the value of x that makes these two lines parallel. So we're going to use the converse theorem here. So we want to prove that these lines are parallel. Well, we know if they were parallel, then that means that these two angles are alternate exterior angles, so they would need to be congruent. So let's solve for x then by setting these two equations equal to each other. All right, so I'm going to add 8 to each side. Add 8. So 78 is equal to 3x, which means x then is equal to 26. So if x is equal to 26, then lines M and lines N would be parallel. And our last problem here, I have 2x plus 5 and 35 degrees. So what would x have to be for these lines to be parallel? Well, looking at our special angle pair, these would be corresponding angles. They're in the same position in that cluster of 4 angles. So they would be congruent. So 2x plus 5 is equal to 135. So I'm going to subtract 5 from each side. So 2x is equal to 130, divide by 2, and x is equal to 65. All right, now we're going to get into our vocab about parallel, skew, and perpendicular lines, as well as parallel planes. So name a line parallel to CD containing point E. All right, well first let's find line CD, and line CD is right here. So we want to find a line that's parallel that includes point E. So there's only one line that would work here, and that line would be line EF. So line EF, don't forget to draw your little line above. All right. Name a line skew to line CD that's containing point E. Now let's go over what skew means. Skew means that two lines that never touch, very similar to parallel lines, except they cannot be in the same plane. Parallel lines are in the same plane. Skew lines are not in the same plane. All right, so let's highlight CD again. Okay. And so it has to go through point E. And so a skew line cannot be EF because those would be parallel lines, like we said in part A. They would be on the same plane. So our only other option would be this line here, because we could not do ED because that would cross line CD and they can't touch. But these lines are considered to be skew. They would never touch even when you extend them. They would just miss each other, and they are on different planes. So EH would be our answer here. Name a line perpendicular to line CD containing point E. Remember, perpendicular means they cross at a 90-degree angle. So CD here, and it would contain point E. So the only line that would work here would be line ED. And even though we do not see a 90-degree angle here, we see one here. So if that angle is 90 degrees, our two lines would also cross at a 90-degree angle. And finally, name a plane parallel to plane ABG containing point E. So first let's find ABG, so this plane. We need to find a plane that is parallel that uses this point. Well, that would only be one plane. It would have to be this opposite face here. And so you can use any of those three, any of the four to name this plane, but since it said E, we'll use E, and then let's say FC. And I should have said the word plane, but that's okay. So those two planes are parallel. In our last problem here, we want to know, is there enough information to prove that lines M and N are parallel? And if so, we want to state our reason. The only reasons we could use is alternate interior, alternate exterior, corresponding, same side consecutive angles. So if one of those works here, then we could prove that those lines are parallel. So let's look at A here. So I have two angles here, and I notice that they have one tick mark, so they are the same. So if those two angles are the same, would these lines be parallel? And the answer is yes, because what type of angle pair do we have here? Well, they're in the same position in the cluster of four, so those would be corresponding angles. And we know corresponding angles are congruent, which is shown in this diagram. So that would prove that these angles then are congruent, or I'm sorry, that these lines are parallel. All right, how about part B? So here are my angles. I notice that these vertical angles are congruent. So would that prove that these two lines are parallel? And the answer here is no. Vertical angles are always congruent. That's not one of our special angle pairs, so just kind of be careful with that. It's a trick question. So just because the vertical angles are congruent does not mean that those two lines are parallel. Let's look at part C. So I have these two angles here. We see that they are congruent. So is that one of our special angle pairs to prove that those lines are parallel? The answer is yes. And the reason that those are alternate interior angles, and we know that alternate interior angles are congruent. All right, let's look at part D. So I want to prove that lines M and N are parallel, or do we have enough information to prove this? So I have these two angles right here. Those would be same side interior or consecutive angles, and we know that those must add up to 180 degrees. So let's see if they do. So 65 plus 114, that is actually only equal to 179. So that does not work. So we do not have enough information to prove that lines M and N are parallel. Part E. So we have lines M and N, and we have these angles out here. So looking at this diagram, do we have enough information? Well, this is also a trick question. It looks like they would be alternate exterior angles, but they're actually not. If I look at one of these transversals, so line P would be a transversal, we'd have to know this angle right here to be able to say, and even though these look like they'd be corresponding, we don't know that they're exactly the same because we don't know that they're parallel. So we can't say that those are actually the same measure. So this is no, just because we do not have enough information. We're using too many transversals, and we have to just look at one of the transversals and see if we know enough information from there. So this is no. And then finally, F. If I look at these angles here, I have same side interior or consecutive angles, and what should they add up to? They should add up to 180, so let's add this up. So 78 plus 102 is equal to 180 degrees. So this works. So yes, and these are consecutive. So we do have enough information. That's all for the study guide. So please remember on the quiz, you can use this study guide while you're taking the quiz. So make sure you have your notes all together and you have this study guide all printed out right next to you. And good luck.